Welcome, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you. This is a very special Labor Day weekend retreat because it's part of our Silver Jubilee year. This is our 25th anniversary. It's the 125th anniversary of the founding of the Ramakrishna Math in Mission, which I've mentioned several times. But all of our centers are having at least one big celebration in honor of that. So this will be more about the founding of the Ramakrishna Math in Mission than about our 25 years. And this is also the 75th anniversary of the founding of Howrah Math, the convent in Santa Barbara, where our Mataji stays. And so we're very happy that we have Pravarjika Krishnaprana here, and she'll also talk about that a little bit. And this is also the 50th anniversary of Mataji joining the order. So it's a very special, special year in many, many different ways. So we're very happy she's here. We're very happy that our Swami Sri Ramakrishna is here. That it seems funny to introduce him and welcome him because he's been a part of our center for so many years and still a part of our center with his remote talks and vlogs and everything. So anyhow, brother, we're happy that you're here also. So let me just go through the schedule a little bit. That we'll start out, then Mataji will speak, and the success of the retreat this weekend will depend upon good questions, because we're going to have a lot of question time periods. So we have on the front, we can pass it around, some pens and paper and everything. So we have a session now that will go, it can go up until lunchtime. We'll see how long it goes, but that'll depend upon how long Sister wants to speak and how many questions there are. So anyhow, write down your questions, and she can decide when she wants to stop and when she wants to answer. Then 12:30 we have lunch. Then 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock will be a bhajan session. So whoever would like to come, you'll get to hear Swami Sri, of course. He'll be singing, and then group singing, and any individual singing. Anybody wants to do that? So please come at that time. Then we have a panel discussion that goes roughly 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and that will be Swami Bhaswatanandaji will be making his first, first public speaking event here. Public reading, and Swami Sri and myself. That'll be the first panel. So what we'll do, each one of us will give a little short talk, and then there can be some questions, and then at the end there can be questions for all of us. So we'll one by one, and then we can all sit together, and you can write out your questions, and we can see who wants to answer, or we can answer jointly, something like that. And then there'll be a tea break, 5:30 to 6. Then we have our Arati and meditation for everyone to attend, 6:30 to 7:30, and then dinner in the basement at 7:30, and we'll show some video presentation. Huh? What did I do wrong? Huh? Oh, some echo. Huh? Okay. Sometimes I say things that should be heard twice. The video presentation, we're thinking of showing some of the reminiscences of Swami Swahananda. So that'll be nice because he's the founder of our center, of course, and initial head of the center. So that'll be today's program. Tomorrow will be similar, only Swami Sri will speak in the morning, and the panel discussion will be with Pravarjika Krishnaprana and Swami B, Swami Brahmarupanandaji. So I will now turn everything over to my dear sister, whom I've also known for over 40 years, because, of course, I'm also part of the Southern California family, and I used to have to go up there and speak and everything. And so anyhow, we're very happy that she's here.
That suits me. but I don't need them right now. So we're here to celebrate 125 years, 75 years, 25 years. Yeah. But what are we celebrating? I mean, seriously. What I feel we're celebrating is the fantastic thing that Ramakrishna, who was just an uneducated holy man in Calcutta at a Kali temple, that his message has spread all over the world. And 125 years ago, and I mean, Swamiji came 1893. That's 100 and how many years? It's a lot of years. And delivered that message to... Huh? Okay, 129 years ago he came. Belur Math hadn't even started. And why did it start? Because he had gathered that core group of young men. And why did they stay together? I feel that they stayed together because he infused them with a sense of love for each other. And the very fact that they could realize God, see God, be with God. And Swamiji was given the situation, he was given the call to go out and tell the world about it. Now, why did he even come to the United States? Holy Mother gave him permission. And in those days, he went and asked her, because he was crossing into a totally unknown situation. No friends, no contacts. He had heard there was going to be a parliament of religions, and someone said, you should represent Hinduism. He was so young, and he came all the way across. Now, I've always heard the story that he landed in Vancouver and ended up in a boxcar going across Canada. And then he ended up in, was it Boston?
Well, first Chicago.
First Chicago, and sitting on a curb when a woman came out and said, you must be part of the parliament. Come to my house. Now, I mean, what kind of grace is that? I mean, you think back in 1893. The United States at that time had horrendous segregation, no integration with different colored skins, huge biases, and this woman who's one of the elite of society comes out and takes him into her home. Why? Why do we have all of these? And now we have how many centers across the United States? This is one, this is part of Southern California, Swami said. We have an octopus called Southern California that's across the United States. But we have so many centers that are here. And then all the young Swamis that were sent in those days to take over after the direct disciples had come. Is it echoing? Okay. Is it me? No. Okay. But they were all, Maharaj, Swami Brahmananda had never left India. Gonna scare me to death.
It's drifting.
I see. Okay. So Swami Brahmananda was never left India, but he sent all his disciples over, all of his very young disciples, had these centers all over the United States. When you stop and look at most of the centers in the United States were founded by Swami Brahmananda's disciples. They were founded in those days, as Swamiji said, he never preached Ramakrishna. He only told his message. And most of the young disciples did the same thing. But the thing that they imparted was Swami Brahmananda's love. They all started their centers with this great feeling of love and gathered people to them with their overwhelming acceptance and camaraderie. So, I know you all know the story when Swami Brahmananda was called to Benares, I think it was, to solve some problems that the monastery was having. You have to kick out these 2 monks. They're causing trouble. And he said, no, just have them come meditate with me. We need more rules. And he said, no, we don't need rules. Didn't Swamiji fix up some? We need more love. So in those early days, now, I'm sure everyone's aware of this too, it was the women of the United States that took care of Swamiji. It was, if you look back, it was all women who took him in, planned his speaking tours, took care of him, took care of everything. And when you read his letters to the families that he lived with, you can see that he called them all sister, mother, babies, how are you doing? He encouraged them in every aspect of their life, not just their spiritual life, but have you found the right man yet? Baby, are you going to get married? Are you sure it's the right person? And he was an integral part of their very being. Most of the young Swamis emulated that. They went out to people, they had no friends, but there was always a known woman who took them in and helped them get started. I mean, Boston, Seattle did when Vivedishananda took over. Swami Prabhavananda, the Mead sister, Sister Lalita, Carrie Wyckoff, she met him and said, I'll give you my house in the Hollywood Hills to form a center. But Swami Parmananda was already there in Los Angeles. So Swami Prabhavananda wrote to India and said, do I have permission to go down to Los Angeles? And I think it was Shivananda wrote down, I think there's room for 2 Swamis in Los Angeles. Once he got to the Hollywood Hills, it was about the Depression time. And he and Sister Lalita stayed in that house. They hired an English woman to come help clean the house. And then the money fell apart. All the money fell apart. Sister Lalita lost all of her investments, everything. So they didn't have any money. But the English woman, Amia, would go out, and when they needed money, she would go and take in sewing or teach actors and actresses how to speak clearly. And she would bring the money back to the center, and that's how they fed themselves. In the meantime, many young women started coming, reading about this. This was now 1943. And Bordaprana, one of the nuns that I lived, there were 5 young women who became the first 5 nuns in the Ramakrishna order. She said she read the gospel for some reason while she was in college, when she was 18. And she wrote to New York. Now, she was in Pasadena, but she wrote to New York to find out how to find out more. And they said, well, just go to Hollywood and talk to Swami Prabhavananda. Her parents wouldn't let her move in until she turned 21. They were dead against it. So she turned 21 and moved in. At that time, then, there were about 4 or 5 of them living there. And Swami gave the first vows to Omiya and Sarada in 1947, which is why we're having the 75th this year, which I hate to tell you, those of us in the convent didn't even know it was 75 years. Swami Sarvadevananda had to tell us. Okay, but why did we join it? I mean, what brings all these? A completely new philosophy, a completely new culture, And why did so many, what was the appeal for the Western audience? Now, this is where I have to read some quotes. So bear with me, okay? I was reading, this is Meister Eckhart. There's a love that fills the universe so completely and richly that it is impossible to separate from itself. It is holiness, a blessed everlastingness that is indivisible and so sweet. You will never see it or comprehend it or pin it down, but it gives of itself without thinking, like the warm light of the sun in the morning. And another, I'm going to read one more, and then we'll tie it together, hopefully. Okay. This is by one of the American Indian chiefs, Chief Dan George, and he expresses it in a different way. He said, "My friends, how desperately do we need to be loved and to love. When Christ said man does not live by bread alone, he spoke of a hunger. This hunger was not the hunger of the body. It was not the hunger for bread. He spoke of a hunger that begins down deep in the very depths of our being. He spoke of a need as vital as breath. He spoke of our hunger for love. Love is something you and I must have. We must have it because our spirit feeds on it. We must have it because without it we become weak and faint. Without love, our self-esteem weakens. Without it, our courage fails. Without love, we can no longer look out confidently at the world. We turn inward and begin to feed upon our own personalities, and little by little, destroy ourselves. With it, we are creative. With it, we march tirelessly. With it and with it alone, we are able to sacrifice for others." Now, all of these statements to me speak of the love that most people encountered when they met these early swamis, which you have here in this center. You all come together here because there is a loving environment that you're all part of. And that's what holds the centers together even now. And what was it that Ramakrishna said we should do? Love God. Yearn for God. And what are we doing except that when we love one another? So, to me, that's kind of what we're celebrating in all of these celebrations, is becoming the one big family of Vedanta, of Ramakrishna, whatever. But I know that when I go to each one of the centers that I go to speak, there's no feeling of, oh, I'm a stranger here. It's like, okay, everything is familiar, everyone is familiar, everyone is loving and kind, and that's what Ramakrishna, I feel, was his message, to love God and to love your fellow man, serve them as God. It's the same message that Christ gave. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. And the second commandment is like unto this, love thy neighbor as thyself. Holy Mother said the same thing. No one is a stranger, my child. You can go anywhere in the world, no one is a stranger. When we start forgetting that love, that's when our problems begin. When we start looking at differences rather than similarities. When we start judging how people behave if they're not behaving like we are. I mean, we all trip. I remember when I first went to India, I met Swami Swahananda, whom I should have met in Santa Barbara, but I didn't, for the first time. And I asked him, what should I do in India? And I was fairly new in the convent, and he looked at me and he said, because he always bobbed his head, at least he did in India, and he said, yes, you will be offended by many things, but you will offend many people. And I looked at him and I went, that's probably just right. Because we do things and we don't know what we're doing until we learn. But he also said, just be yourself and everyone will understand. They are just being themselves. And I think he should have said, just be your best self rather than just be yourself to me at that time. But it was, it was interesting because we spent 4 months over there and there were many new things. I'll tell you another story. You all probably have met Swami Ranganathananda. Okay. He used to visit us in Santa Barbara about every year or every other year. And he totally at home wherever he was. Never had an instance, he'd walk in from the plane and he'd to our bookstore to greet Pravarjika, and he'd say, okay, you can leave, I can take over selling the books. But when in India, when he was head of Hyderabad, Pravarjika and I were there, and we'd been traveling, and he came up and he was so gracious. He fixed the mosquito nets because we didn't know how to fix them. And then he took us down to the dining room. Now, the dining room was probably about this big. Tables, little tables, individual tables along that side, little individual tables along that side, and a few up here. And we all sat, facing each other, all the monks and then Pravarjika and me. And the meal was fine. We were eating with our fingers and everything. And Pius came, and it was like, and being as respectful as I was not, Swami, why do you all have spoons and we don't? And he looked at me and he said, in your country, I use a fork. In my country, you do it like we do. So guess what I did? Because I was not going to do this and have it all over me. But, those are the kind of things like when people aren't strangers, when you can feel at ease with them, when you can be yourself with them. Your best self, not your grumpy self or your tamu self, but be your best self. I was told by the sound man in our temple, because I keep going back, they scare me, and he said, stay within 8 inches. There's a magic bubble. And I try. But that was the first, that incredible love is what drew me to Vedanta. I had not studied religion at all. Well, I grew up a practicing Episcopalian. I'd been through Sunday school, the whole thing. I'd been confirmed, baptized, everything, and managed to not really realize what it was about. Not interested in actually pursuing God or finding religion. I was quite happy. I was going to school, I was teaching, I was having fun. And a group of us went down to Santa Barbara on a vacation. And we met this woman who lived down the street from the temple. And she said, do you want to meet my teacher? He's in town today. They all said yes. And I kind of went, okay, I'll go along. Not having any interest, zero. And we walked up to the convent and went into the living room, and there's Swami Prabhavananda sitting in his little slacks and shirt with his feet up on an ottoman, reading the paper. And he said, oh, come in, please. Where are you from? What are you doing? Not one talk of religion, nothing. And it was, but so full of love that I immediately went, I'm going to move down here because I want to know where he got that. And that was it. I moved down within 6 months and have been there ever since. Not in the convent. I was not going to be a nun. He'd look at, I'd go to the gospel readings and he'd say, make you into a good nun. And I'd go, oh, no, you're not. No, you're not. And we'd tease each other. But then, I'll tell you the rest of the story. I'm telling you my life story instead of the celebration, sorry. I went to him and I said in an interview, well, I guess I better move into the convent because I read that you should live as close to your guru as possible to learn what you can from them. And he said, yes. And I said, you're pretty old, so you're not going to really live that much longer. I better do it now. And he said, that's right. And I said, Swami, I won't stay once you're gone, you know. And he said, uh-huh. And so he said, yes, come. So that's what happened. But these celebrations bring up all these memories of, and I'd say they're all, if you bring up the good spiritual memories and all the encounters that you've had with wonderful holy people that you've met, encounters that experiences that you've had yourself. I mean, to relive that kind of memory is spiritually uplifting, rather than going into, I'm not a big fan of going back and rehashing, all of the incidents of our lives and rolling them around. I tend to be a little bit of a Pollyanna and just do the good ones. And the ones that help me remember God. Now, that's about where I stop. So are there any questions? I don't talk for very long.
Well, we're ready to write them. Everyone should ask.
You're even getting my gulps. Sorry.
I've heard so many stories about this feeling of love that Swami Swahananda apparently effused. Can you just kind of tell some story?
How can you describe it? You walked into a room. Here was a man who could sit there looking like, and someone said, "Why are you mad?" "That's just my face." But I don't know how you describe it. It didn't take more than 2 minutes for me to feel like he was the best friend I'd ever had, the most loving grandfather I'd ever had. There was no awe or distance. It was like we recognized each other immediately. And it was silly. I mean, I hadn't felt that way with other people. And the other thing that he always did, when people met him, he'd start crying for no reason. Absolutely no reason. Everyone would be sitting there with tears running down their face. He kept Kleenex a lot and a handkerchief and gave a lot of them away. And no one cared. You'd sit there. My mother and father were very upset. They thought I had joined one of those Eastern cults in 1972 that people were having, to get their children out of. So I invited them down and took them to Hollywood to meet Swami Prabhavananda. Now my father was He was a military man, he'd been in the Navy. He sat next to Swami and cried through the entire meal. Just tears running down his face, and Swami just handed him a Kleenex and kept on talking like everything was normal. And that was the way it was. You'd go have an interview with him and tears would be streaming down, and you were perfectly happy. It was, well, he always said, it's washing the mirror.
Can you describe the holiness that you said you saw in these?
How do you do that? I mean, one young Swami in India asked me on my last trip, he said, have you ever sat with anyone who exuded holiness without speaking? And I thought, yes, of course. Of course I have. You sit, when I first moved in, there were eight of us in the convent. I was the eighth one. And we have a small shrine called Holy Mother Shrine. We call it the small shrine, but everyone else calls it Holy Mother Shrine. It was on the property when it was given to us. And it's a 6x9 room, adobe. So you know how big 6x9 is, 6 feet by 9 feet. And 9 of us would go down there. 7 of us with brother and Swami. So 9 of us all together, and meditate every morning together. And it was like, you read in the gospel when you meditated with Maharaj, your mind was taken to another realm. Well, you didn't even know it, but it was. Meditation was really easy with him. And then when he couldn't go down to the shrine, we all went to his room to meditate with him. So he gave of himself 110%. He was always there for you. There was very much like you have right here. I mean, quite frankly, there's not, and remember, like the way Swami Swahananda was. Easily accessible all the time. And that's the other thing. I think we're so lucky in the United States to have that kind of access. Because when I went to India in 2010, I realized how really blessed we are. To see the old Swamis was, you had to make arrangements and you had to, get in to see them, and it was, you couldn't just walk into their room. And here, in Hollywood, when Swami Swahananda was there, you could practically just walk into his room anytime. And it was similar with Swami Prabhavananda. He was around, and anyone who came could just walk in, sit down with him, talk to him. You made appointments if you had specific questions, but it was a casual being with you all the time. And Swami Swahananda was the same way. They exude a kind of holiness that lifts your whole being when you're with them. He was grumpy, but and volatile, but it was very holy. I'll tell. Did any of you go up to Portland to see Swami Swahananda while he was alive? Did you?
Several of his disciples are here.
Okay, well then you know. When we used to visit, because Devi Prana is his disciple, and she'd go up every year to see him for a couple, 3 weeks, and one of us would go up with her, and his shrine was different. It pulsated with Holy Mother when you walked in, but it was a little dirty. The flowers were there till they were really gone. And the pictures needed dusting really badly. And so, being the good convent-trained Santa Barbara nuns who keep everything nice and clean, we'd go in to help. Oh man, did he yell. he yelled so hard, "Don't you touch it." And you'd go, "Oh, okay." But even with the yelling, it was that sense of, I don't know, it was like washing your soul. I don't know, it was taking your karma away, because you always felt kind of, okay, that was really scary, but now I'm really happy. Shall I start on some of these questions? Okay. Oh dear. I have been informed by the scripture. I have been informed. The scriptures tell us our family, be it husband, wife, or relations, are predestined or prescribed by God. Is that true? I don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with our karma. Do we call that God? I think it's a compilation of our past lives and our past actions. And what I was always told was the soul chooses the family where it can best work out its karma. That's what I've been told. And I think oftentimes we may not be behind that one. We think, what did I do to get this family? Or I'm really blessed to have this family. But the way I understand it is everything that happens to us in every circumstance is for our benefit. We can either turn it into a Godward search, or we can resist it and fight it and dig the samskara deeper. I think that's what Holy Mother meant by forbear, forbear, forbear. We have to learn acceptance. If we truly believe everything is God's will, then even all the annoying things that happen to us are God's will. And if we can accept them, then we're the person that benefits. If we resist it, who's the person that's being harmed? We, ourselves. We're, like they say, your mind is your best friend or your worst enemy. Okay, next question. How to avoid conflict? That was a hard one. Sometimes, okay, I'll tell you the story that I read that I try to remember. It has to do with the samurai way of life. In the 12th century, there was a samurai warrior who was fighting for the shogun, and he was in the throes of the fight, and suddenly he threw down his weapon and walked off. And they all said, "Why did you do that?" And he said, "Because I got angry." It's to avoid conflict is to try to control the emotion. I've read once that things happen, but what we do, how we interpret those things, is what affects us. The event is just an event, and we pile on emotions and reactions and past experience, and we form ourselves in our own heads a determination of what's going to happen. And that usually makes us react rather than rationally think and act. And that avoids, well, my grandmother used to say, count 10 before you react. It's true. Take that little 10 seconds to see, do I want to react or do I not want to react? Make it a positive choice rather than see an enemy where you jab your finger in and they go, we have to use our discrimination to avoid conflict. Sometimes you can't avoid it. Sometimes it has to happen. But don't let it happen with a great deal of anger and emotion connected to it. Simply state the facts of the side. You know, if you have two sides, each listen to each other and actually listen and hear what the other one's saying instead of planning what you're going to say, which often we do. My planning usually goes after the fact. I could have said. Sometimes our mind becomes low, depressed, sad. How to lift it up at that time? Okay, well, first thing is to recognize what it's doing. Second thing is to redirect it. You can't change the emotion. I was just reading, it's easier to change an emotion through action than to simply concentrate on the negative emotion. So if you're low and depressed, go out and exercise. We had one of our nuns, every time she got stressed, she cleaned her closets. But activity, I mean, that's one of the things we're told. Rajas overcomes tamas. And low, depression, sadness is tamas. So we take action. And if we put ourselves in action, then the mood will change of itself. We don't have to concentrate on whether we're depressed or whether we're sad or how we're feeling. It will. You don't repress, you redirect. Because repressing things actually strengthens them. You're just shoving them down, but you don't get rid of them. Okay, next one. I know that there is a website for Vedanta Convent where you live, but would you please tell us briefly the activities and initiatives of the convent? What do you do for women in distress? We probably have the same kind of, with a few less activities that you have here. We have a regular schedule, meditation in the morning from 6 to 7, breakfast together at 8 o'clock, karma yoga. When we say karma yoga, that's our specified duty for the day, from 9 to 11:30, meditation from 12 to 1, except for the cook. Lunch, we offer hot food offering in our small shrine every day, so it has to go down at 21, and then we eat lunch at 1 altogether. Hopefully an hour of gardening every day, because Brahmananda said working with the earth was very good for the soul. So we try to get out and do it. Sometimes it's not a whole hour, but we try and each have a section of the garden and do something. That's 1 hour. Then study is pretty much on your own at our place, because we have 11 buildings and 12 acres that we have to take care of. So there's a lot of karma yoga that's done. And study, we all do it. Like, I think I was given the training center reading list shortly after I moved in, and I read all the books on it, and I would if I had questions, I would ask someone. Then we have Arati every night at 6 to 7. 3 nights a week we have gospel readings in the convent. We have a Wednesday reading in the temple. We have Saturday gospel readings in the temple and Sunday lectures. So that's our general description of the day. And what do we do with women in distress? It depends upon what kind of distress they're in. We try to meet what they need. I can't say, I can't say we do any one thing. The one thing we kind of do is we take part of a homeless shelter, a church-run homeless shelter in Santa Barbara that specifies women with children, and men with children. Sometimes it's the mother who has gone to jail or is on the street with drugs. It's basically geared to the children to make a safe place for the kids. And it's a drug-free, alcohol-free shelter that they come into each night. And it's been cooperatively run by the churches of Santa Barbara for 35 years. Now, should I brag? They have a success rate. It's called Transition House. They're trying to transition them back to normal living, and they thought it would take a month. Well, it takes a couple years, but they have a 92% success rate, I was shocked, quite frankly. I thought, that's not true, but it's true. Okay. When did you realize you couldn't leave? What were your memorable moments with your guru? Well, I think I almost covered that. I had some others when he was scolding me like crazy, but oh, that was another funny thing. I went down to Hollywood. I told him I'd leave when he was gone. I don't think he's gone yet. That's why I'm still here. And he told me at the very beginning that you could realize God today. And I was convinced that it wouldn't take more than a month. Who knows? Maybe it's a long month. Once I was down in Hollywood, and I cooked for him, which was in itself amazing, because I moved in, and there were people that had been there so much longer, and I was kind of new and kind of pushy. Satyaprana, who was one of the first 5 pranas, came in one night having served him supper, and she went, that man, he said, don't innovate. I was just trying to make the soup taste good. I'm not going to cook for him anymore. She was Irish, she had a little temper. And I went, I'll cook. And she said, okay. And I didn't know what I was getting in for, but it was well worth it. So one night I went just to go down to Hollywood to give the cooks down there a week's break. And I'd cooked for him, and I still don't know what he was scolding me about. One of the other nuns from Santa Barbara had come down to drive me back up, and he scolded and yelled, and I was doing everything. I was killing him, I was doing this, I was doing that. Why couldn't I get my act together? Why can't you keep your mind on what you're doing? And I'm sitting there going, what is he talking about? I don't know what he's talking about. And the room was full of people, because his bedroom was always full of people. Everyone walked out, and the scolding stopped. Dead. He was just his normal self. Absolute, nothing. And I'm going, People started walking in again. He started the scolding right up where he'd left off. And I'm going, what is wrong with this man? And finally he got me in tears, and I stormed out, and Swami Swahananda, I'll never forget, I was so mean to him. He was brand new in this country. And he said, you know that these scoldings are burning up your karmas. I turned on him, because I got mad. And I said, do you think I'd take this from anyone else in the world but him? And stormed off. Now later, the other nun from Santa Barbara said, you know that scolding was for me, it wasn't for you at all. And I went, what? And she said, yeah, I could never have taken him yelling at me like that. And she even said it later. She said, yeah, that was all for me because she left the convent, but he was trying to help her by yelling at me. And I'm still like, what are we doing? But that's one of the memories. That's how it kind of worked. He didn't mind scolding in the temple either. How do we get conviction that we are not the body, we are not the mind, but pure consciousness? I'm still working on it. I don't know. I mean, practice. But I don't know. When something hurts, I know I'm part of the body. When I'm hungry, I know I'm part of the body. I'd like to be pure consciousness, and my mind still runs away every once in a while. It goes on vacations. So I really don't know. I mean, just continually practice, do what your guru said, meditate per instruction. It'll all happen. You can't lose, and you'll never be a failure. What could you tell us, please, about the most intense spiritual moments in your life? Well, I think the first one was just meeting Swami and having that complete turnaround. But I think we've all had moments like that. I call them pivotal moments in life. And you have a choice, and you don't even know why you're making the choice sometimes. And if you stop and think back now, what would your life be like if at that pivotal moment you had made another choice? Now, are they predetermined? Are they karmic? Are they the grace of God? I don't know. I call mine the grace of God because I had no conscious search for God. So who knows, maybe past karma, I don't know. I really don't. I'm thankful for it every day of my life, but I don't know what caused it. And I think that's another thing we have to, it helps to recognize those pivotal moments that changed our lives and directed us to here. And be grateful for them and acknowledge that we did receive the grace of God. That was another, okay. You asked what spiritual, every summer Swami Pavitrananda from New York came to stay with Swami Prabhavananda. And I was telling someone, every day at lunch, they stayed in the convent at that time because we didn't have a separate monastery. We had what we called the main house, which had 2 bedrooms. And Swami Prabhavananda stayed in one, and Pavitrananda stayed in the other one. And then we stayed in other buildings. But we did all the cooking and all of the stuff. So every day at lunch, they would have the conversation. Swami P took grace, and Pavitrananda took self-effort. And at the time, I didn't realize we were getting spiritual training. But it was interesting conversation. But every day we got exactly what it was, and every day they came to the same conclusion. The two work together. You have the grace to be able to do the self-effort. The self-effort gets you more grace, and there is no failure if you're doing what if your choices are the things that will lead you towards your goal, which is God. So that's best way to know the self, and the way to establish peace on this planet. I have no idea. Peace on the planet never happened. The only kind of peace you can get is in yourself. If you're peaceful, your world will be peaceful. But I think the planet's like a dog's curly tail. It's never going to happen. And to know ourselves, well, meditate. We can use discrimination and introspection to figure out the foibles of our small self and to work with those, like figuring out what makes you react to certain things, why you're doing it, why do I always have that reaction? That you can do. And then with meditation, concentration on the divine, hopefully you can redirect the negative emotion or the thing that's causing you a problem. Redirect it to God. I mean, they always said sublimate everything. Direct it to God. If it's a problem, direct that towards God. If you're angry, be angry with God for not giving you liberation now. If you're whatever, sublimate. Don't try to squash it and repress it. The more you try and squash it and repress it, the deeper it goes into your being. But according to modern psychology, if you recognize it, now you don't have to tell everyone about it, you just recognize it yourself and start sublimating, redirecting it. That'll give you, I think that helps to lead so that you know yourself. And the self with a capital S, meditation and grace of God. What is the exact location where the statue of Swamiji has finally been installed at the Art Institute? I don't know. I heard it's not at the, is it at the Art Institute? I heard it was at the new center that Swami Swahananda started. Yeah?
Not in the same building, the Art Institute started. On Michigan, no. That statue has not been erected on the same building where Swamiji delivered the
I don't think it was. I think it was put there for the Swamiji calling. But I don't remember it. I went when it was the 125th anniversary, whatever, 100 of the Chicago Parliament. But I don't remember a statue at the Art Institute. And that may be just my memory. Okay, that's the end. Sid, thank you. Okay.
If you think of any things, even during lunchtime, you can write things down. There'll be other opportunities to ask questions. Mataji will be on the panel tomorrow afternoon also, and you can just chat with her. That'll be available. And so now, is Rai here? Okay, we'll have a closing song, and then in about 20 minutes or so, we'll have lunch.
Dhana dhana murata Krishna murari. Dhana dhana murata Krishna murari. Shulachana giridhari. Jabi sundar lagi yati pyari. Dhana dhana murata Krishna murari. Banshi dhara mana mohan shohabe. Banshi dhara mana mohan shohabe. Bali bali jave mori mana bhave. Shabarang jnana vichari. Dhana dhana murat Krishna murari.
City of my love, go to thee, O Lord, go to thee. May all the whispers of the silent aspirations reach your ears, O Lord, reach your ears. Wherever my thoughts may stray, may they respond at once to your call, and may all the sorrows on the way vanish at thy pull, O Lord, vanish at thy pull. This begging bowl of my life, it's filled with alms from this world. May that be completely emptied, and may my heart be filled with gifts from thee, sweet Lord, with secret gifts from thee. May all the intensity of my love go to thee, my Lord, go to thee. May all the whispers of my silent aspirations reach your ears, sweet Lord, reach your ears. May all the intensity of my love go to thee,